Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. I'm your host, Rob Z. These are true testimonies of breakthrough. I bring incredible people on this podcast who have had incredible setbacks in their life, and they've experienced the breakthrough that has taken them to the next level and broken those chains that have been holding them back. So I want you to be inspired, the listener, by these stories. Today, we have the incredible Susan Snow with us on the podcast. Today, we're talking about healing, resilience, PTSD, how to be vulnerable, how to go through that grieving process, and also forgiving. Some big things today that I want to touch on in this episode. And Susan, as I jump in to the podcast, I like to start things off right off the bat with a powerful question. You gave me a powerful quote leading up to this episode from Brene Brown that said, "Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage." And vulnerability is something that a lot of, especially men, struggle with, right? A lot of people, but especially men, struggle with. When you say when that quote says that it sounds like truth and feels like courage, what does that mean to you for you to express vulnerability in your life?
Well, you have to have courage to tell your truth. Bottom line. I think for me, it was when I saw that quote, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I, for many, many years, hid my story. I kept it all inside. I created what I call an emotional mask, where whatever people told me I wore that mask. So if they said I was brave and I was strong or whatever, I would put that emotional mask on, and I got really good at that, really, really good at that. The problem with that is that you're still internalizing all of those emotions and thoughts and feelings. And so it really keeps you from having and experiencing life to its fullest. At that point, you're just moving through life. You're not living it. So I had to find my courage to be vulnerable when I was at my darkest point in my life. And that's what changed my trajectory.
Okay, so we're going to get into this. We're going to dive into it. Thank you. Great opening question, great opening response. It was a great stage for us here today. I just want to welcome everybody to the platform, to the Unstuck movement. I want this to be an example. If you are stuck somewhere in your life, use these stories as a breakthrough for yourself. We're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. And also, if you want to launch your platform, maybe you are the expert at what you do, but you want to be the go-to authority that people come to in the industry or in the topic, in the niche that you are an expert in. You want to make incredible connections personally and professionally and build something that leaves a lasting impact on people's lives. I encourage you to launch your own platform. I'd love to help you do that. You can do that by joining our waitlist for the Pro Podcaster Academy at robzwentz.com. Today on the podcast with us is Susan Snow, a trauma resiliency coach, speaker, and author whose life changed forever when her father, an LAPD detective, Thomas Williams, was murdered in 1985. She now helps others find hope and healing after trauma through her coaching, speaking, and her book, which we'll talk about in this episode. So, Susan, talking about that vulnerability that you were talking about a minute ago, I find that really interesting. You said you wore emotional masks. And those masks sounded like kind of a good thing, like being bold, being strong, being brave, like people, what you were being, what people you think were telling you that you were. So I find that interesting. It's good to be bold. It's good to be strong. It's good to be brave, right? But at the same time, you weren't being vulnerable. Can you explain that a little bit more to me?
No, I was hiding behind it. You know, I thought that was a safe space for me. And because when my dad was killed, I was 17 years old. And unfortunately, to get into the story in a very short manner, he was a LAPD detective, and he was the lead detective on a case where the man who was involved was actually running a robbery ring. And he was the one, he was out on bail during his trial. My dad had testified the morning of Halloween 1985. And later on, my dad went to go pick up my 6-year-old brother from school. And this man laid in wait and killed my dad in front of my 6-year-old brother. And my dad saved his life, saved my brother's life by telling him to duck down in the truck. He knew exactly what was happening. And then my mom and I were called to the school and witnessed his body in the aftermath. And so where that comes into play is where I experienced PTSD. Now, I didn't know it. In the 80s, there was no talk of mental health. There were no resources for kids back then. And because of that, I really, I went from being a regular 17-year-old kid with all the worries of the world, was I going to go to a Halloween party that night with my boyfriend? And it turned into witnessing my dad losing my father, being sent away. My mom actually sent me away to a neighbor's. So then I had to navigate all of those feelings and all of those emotions by myself. The poor neighbor, she tried to do what she could. She knew my parents for many, many years. So she was trying to grasp the situation herself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I did have my boyfriend, now my husband, come and be with me, but we were still two kids trying to navigate all of this incredibly stressful, chaotic, sad, emotional time. And unfortunately, there was so much going on that night, and there was just so many people at my house. I didn't get to grieve privately. I had people in my face all the time. They didn't find the guys that were involved for 6 days. So for 6 days, we had extreme police coverage of our house. And I had bodyguards, and the media, because it was a big story at the time, was camped out. And so I went from this normal life to something that I did not recognize whatsoever. And going through all of that, I was having all the things that come up with PTSD, such as severe depression. And I didn't understand it. I was a kid and I didn't know how to verbalize it. I just knew that every day I didn't want to get out of bed. And I felt like I weighed 400 pounds in my bed when I was laying there. I felt like my whole world was gone. My dad was my best friend. And, I had a very, very like respectful, wonderful father who was very present in my life. And then on the other hand, I had a mother who I now recognize as being a narcissistic parent. And so I struggled with not only losing my dad, losing my safety, but also losing my other parent in a way. And so that's where that mask came into play, because I didn't, even though I would have loved someone to come to my aid or ask me a question that would allow me to give what was going on inside of me, just really be able to articulate what was going on. And I didn't have that. Um, my first, my, my first experience with therapy was not great. Uh, LAPD came to my mother and said, we want to pay for a therapist for all three of you. And in those days, I thought if you go to therapy, you're nuts. Like you're on your way to the cray cray house, right? So I was a kid, so I didn't know. I just heard what I heard. And, but at the time I was living in a fog, and you could just push me in the direction you needed me to go, and I would go that direction.
Mm.
So when my mom said, "You're going to therapy," I just said, "Okay." I didn't know. I had hopes. I had hopes that an adult would help me navigate all of the things that were going on inside of me, because by that time I was suicidal. I had suicidal ideation. I didn't know what it was. Um, I had anxiety and panic attacks that I didn't know how to handle. And in hindsight, this gentleman who saw me was not, and I talk about this a lot, trauma competent. He didn't know how to deal with the amount of trauma. So he avoided it by keeping our sessions very shallow in context. So the questions were always around, you know, the easy stuff, like my relationship with my mom, which that's on top of that, like my schooling or my boyfriend or my brother, just didn't ever. And people are always shocked when I say this, but he never asked me how that night affected me ever.
Jeez.
And I saw him for a year. And every week that I saw him, I was like, oh, today's going to be the day he's going to help me, right? I don't want to feel like this. I feel awful. And it never happened. And so after a year of seeing him, he looked at me and he said, Susan, you're a well-rounded young lady and you're going to be fine for the rest of your life. And I don't need to see you anymore. And I left that awful, saying to myself, my self-talk was, you've cracked. You're crazy. This is the way you're going to live for the rest of your life. You better figure this out on your own, right? Nobody's going to help you. Obviously, a professional can't even help you. And so that increased my wanting to put that mask on, to hide behind it, because I thought I was stuck like that for the rest of my life. I didn't think that it was ever going to get any better, and that I was just going to have to assimilate.
Wow. How long did that go on for?
14 years.
What changed that made it change?
14 years of fight or flight. And, and looking back, what that does when you're living in fight or flight is it doesn't allow you to see things for what they really are. And so in doing that, you allow people into your life that maybe are not in the best interest, or you allow people to use you. You don't make good choices in life, right? There's just so many different things that can come from that. And for me, it was hiding. It was pretending that everything was okay when it was not. It was not being able to recognize the people that were in my life, but were not, healthy. It was not a healthy situation. I struggled with work and what to do with my life, right? I mean, a lot of things that younger people go through, but for me, it was a little bit more intense, because on top of that, I had this feeling like I had to have a certain life. I had to follow the playbook of life, right? And so whatever someone told me I needed to do, that's what I thought I needed to do. So but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until I had married that boyfriend. We have now 2 kids. We decided to relocate from Southern California to Colorado in April of 97. I was currently at the time working as a hairdresser. And 2 years into living here, I was working in a salon that was close to Littleton, Colorado. And on April 20th of 1999, I went to take a break from doing my client's hair and turned on the TV, and all of the coverage of the Columbine shootings happened to be on. And I had a visceral reaction. I didn't understand what was happening to me because I didn't, I was told I was going to be fine for the rest of my life. So as I watched that, the flashbacks happened. And I saw the school, I saw the police, I saw the ambulances, I saw all the things that I saw the night of my dad's death. And none of my colleagues knew my story. So they did not understand why I was having this like sweaty, anxious panic attack. And they knew that I didn't live anywhere near Littleton. I was too young at the time to have kids that went to that high school. So nobody understood what was going on, including myself. I had no idea why I was reacting to this. And so in order to get through the day, I did what I always did. I put that mask back on and I went out and I did my client's hair for the rest of the day. Everybody else around me was a hot mess. Like people were angry, people were crying, people were so emotional. It was a sad day, but Susan was like, no, this isn't affecting me. I'm fine. I can handle this. I can handle this. This is fine. I'll be fine. And fine is a big one. When I hear people say fine, I'm like, oh, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Walked out the door and all of that came crashing down. All of that old, all of the emotion.
Uh-oh. Hopefully we didn't lose her. Susan? Oh, man. See, this is such a good story, such a powerful story, and the power of the internet fails us. As we're talking about this, and hopefully Susan bounces back on here. But as we're talking about this, it just reminds me, hiding behind these things is so easy to do. And oftentimes, which I really wanted to get into, Susan, about this, oftentimes when we're hiding behind something, we don't even realize we're hiding behind it, which I think is where she's going with this, is when you have a mask on, when you're doing those sorts of things. There, she fell off. We'll wait for her to come back on. When you're doing those sorts of things, when you're hiding behind that mask, you don't even know you're doing it. And it's a protection mechanism for you to try to heal, or maybe actually probably not even try to heal, but try to protect yourself from the things that have happened, right? Which is logical. I want to protect myself from bad things. I want to protect myself from bad things that happen to me. But if you don't process those things, they're still always running in the background. And I really hope she pops back on here so that we can tell that story of okay, now I know I'm hiding behind these things. I have to release these things. How do I release them? Number one, especially if it's been years of not processing the thing, not going through the thing. And then number two, who am I without those things? Even though I've been covering them up for a long time, even though I don't even realize that I've been covering them up. So I'm realizing now, oh, I might not even be me. I might be pretending. And this is where, if you're a people pleaser, which I've experienced throughout my life, if you're a people pleaser and that sort of mentality, then You know what I'm talking about. Like, you put a mask on so people are okay with you. And so you feel like you're safe, right? And so when you put that mask on to feel like you're safe, you are cutting yourself off from healing from the things that you need to go through. And I'm not saying that's easy. I'm just saying it. I'm not saying that it's easy. Trust me, it's like a lifelong process. So I really hope we get her back on here, because I want to hear the rest of this story. And I want for anybody watching or listening right now to heal from this, to experience healing from this. And she mentioned the word fine, right? What does the word fine even mean? Because when people say, I'm fine, so it means like it can be used to describe a person's appearance. I'm fine. My health is fine. Or my satisfaction, like I'm fine, right? But it doesn't work. If somebody says, hey, you went skiing this weekend, how was the skiing? Oh, it was fine. You knew it sucked. Something went wrong. Hey, how's my hair look? Oh, it's fine. Oh, your hair is trash. Your hair's cooked. You need to get that fixed. So I have a 10-year-old. I'm allowed to use the word cooked because he uses it with me, and now I know how to use it. And fine technically means of high quality. It's interesting how that word, we even use the word fine as a mask. And I really wish Susan would come back on, because I'd love to make that point. It's like the word fine is a mask, and you can see when somebody says I'm fine, they have the mask on. And everybody knows somebody who wears a mask. Everybody knows somebody who has a mask on and is hiding behind that mask. You usually can tell. If you're on a surface level friendship or relationship with somebody, it might be hard to tell they're wearing a mask. If you're closer with that person, it starts to become more apparent. If you're best friends with that person, you know. If you're really a true friend, you're going to bring it up. If you're a family member or you live with that person, then you see that mask every day. You see the mask come off sometimes whenever they're at home. And, I think just bringing this up for you to think about in this conversation, am I wearing a mask? And if I am wearing a mask, where might it be? Who in my life might I know that's wearing a mask? How is that mask protecting them? And how could I show up in a way that is a gentle approach to addressing an overarching issue? So how can I show up in a way for this person that makes them feel safe, but also lets them know, hey, I see you. I see you behind that mask. And you might not want to say, I see you behind that mask, but you say, I see you. I know, I don't know what you went through, but I know you went through something, and I want to help you. I want to support you through that thing. So I'm going to pause right now. I'm going to give a shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, and hopefully we get Susan back on here. If not, we'll discuss this a little bit more, and we'll send ourselves off. But I really wish she'd come back. I'm loving this conversation. Are you struggling to make consistent, valuable content for yourself? Do you want to have an efficient and effective way to create content that attracts the people that you want to connect with in life, the people you want to build relationships with in business? Do you want to be the go-to authority at what you do, at what you're great at? Would it be helpful for you if you had a platform that connects you to incredible people in your industry? The kind of platform that gets you leads and lands you clients without you having to beat down anybody's door or blow up anybody's inbox. Whether you're already creating content or you're desiring to start and it's something that's been kind of burning inside of you for a while, I urge you and encourage you to check out the Pro Podcaster Academy. Get started right now. Join the waitlist at robzwentz.com.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, join the Connected Leaders Academy today. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
Hey, we're back. Susan, I filled in the gap as you were gone, so I got an email during that ad break that you had a power surge. So it's great to have you back.
Yeah, that was so crazy.
Well, Yeah, well, you're telling a powerful story. Sometimes people don't want those stories to be told. Who knows what's going on? But I was just, as you were, as I was kind of talking to myself, and when you fell off, I was thinking about the word fine. It's interesting. The word fine is like a mask, right? And you can see right through that mask
Oh yeah.
of fine. And I was also saying about how when people are wearing a mask, if you're on a, I'm curious your thoughts on this. If you're on a surface level relationship with somebody, you might not know they're wearing a mask. You probably can't tell, right? But if you go a little bit deeper with somebody, you become a friend of theirs, a close friend, you might notice there's something going on there, something they're hiding, or they're not able to talk about. And then if you're really close to that person, you live with them, then you kind of either address the issue of the mask, or you might dance around it, the elephant in the room, for years. And
Oh yeah.
I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that? And then if you know somebody's wearing a mask, or you just know that somebody has something they're unable to talk about, how do you address that with them? Because that's one of the biggest things for anybody, is to have somebody close enough to them who cares enough to address a difficult issue. What would you say to that?
Well, I think the most important thing that I do personally is try to give people a safe space. I think a lot of times when I'm able to be vulnerable about my own story, or talk about something that I'm vulnerable about, it allows someone to open up. It allows them, it's almost like, oh, okay, she just told me something that was really incredibly important to her, and very private, or not private, but maybe that she's a safe space. Maybe she'll understand and she won't judge me. Because I think a lot of people are so afraid of judgment about letting other people in and be able to see their story, hear their story. And everybody has one, everybody has a story of some sort, right? And I think the most important thing that, like we were talking about vulnerability, I mean, it is really important to be able to have a safe space to be vulnerable. And I didn't get that until after that event.
Where did that
That
safe space
happened.
eventually come to for you? You said years later, what, 14 years later? So you were telling the story about Columbine
Yeah.
and how you were hiding behind the mask at that point. Were you leading to the point where you broke and you knew you had to heal?
Right. Yeah.
What happened?
I started spiraling. As soon as I, left my salon, I started driving home, and, I stopped sleeping, which is one of the things that happened to me when I was a teen, is I stopped sleeping, for fear of having those visions come up for me. And that started happening again. I started spiraling to the point where I started to become, I had suicidal ideation. I had plans in my head. The problem now was that I was now a mom. I had two beautiful kids that needed their mom. And so I had this real fight in my head about, I don't want to feel this way anymore, but I can't leave my babies. And it wasn't until my husband met me at the door, because he's a smart man, and he watched this happen. He was watching it, and he said it was a slippery slope. And he told me one day that I had two choices. I can either get help that day, or he was going to put me in a hospital.
Mm.
And so I said, okay, I'm putting up my white flag. I'm putting it up, right? And I will go get help. And so I did. I went to a physician first, and he put me on antidepressants.
I'm curious. So your husband, he was with you whenever this tragedy happened with your dad. You guys were together. And then for 14 years, you guys were together, got married, had kids. Did he, what was his response to, you wearing this mask all those years? Did he notice anything, or did he think that you were okay too? Did you guys ever talk about that?
Honestly, he didn't know.
That's really interesting, because you were
didn't
able to
really
hide so well.
understand. Yeah, he didn't know. He didn't know. It wasn't until he read my book, and then he understood.
Oh, wow.
Because the other side of that too is that when you're wearing a mask, for me especially, I had this feeling of, oh, don't worry, this is not your burden, it's mine. So if people came to me and said, how can I support you? That was my answer. I'm fine. I can handle this myself. This is not your burden. And that I did that to him. And
that's interesting. We can wear our mask so well. And did you forget at one point that you were wearing a mask? Or forget, you probably didn't even know that you were wearing one.
You
right?
lose your identity.
Yeah.
You literally do. Because on one side, there's this person that you want to be.
Right.
But on the other side of that, you're afraid to be. You're afraid to step out. You're afraid to let people know what is really going on in your head. And it wasn't until I went to that doctor and he said, here's a business card of a woman I want you to make an appointment with. And she was a therapist. And because of my last experience, I laughed in his face. I thought it was ridiculous. And I thought, it didn't happen for me 14 years ago. What makes you think it's going to happen now? And he said, honestly, you don't have a choice. And so I said, okay. And I made that appointment, and I'm very grateful that I did, because this woman specialized in severe trauma and especially PTSD. So when I was able to sit down with this woman, and the first 3 minutes, I knew there was something different. There was a feeling that I got that I was like, okay, I'm going to tell this woman what I've been going through. And now I'm an adult, so I can verbalize everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And I had this sense of feeling like she was a safe space. And so I told her, and she listened to me and said, Susan, everything you've gone through since you were 17 is normal, because you have PTSD. And I was a little confused, because I always thought PTSD was something that military people go through. Susan Snow doesn't go through that, right? I'm a regular old person. And she said, no. She said, anyone who goes through severe trauma can experience PTSD. But what you need to understand is PTSD isn't something that goes away. It is something you manage. You work through it. So in that very moment, that was pivotal for me, because I finally felt like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Like, this is not how I have to live for the rest of my life. You're just trying to grasp at things and try to figure things out by myself. I actually have another human being that is going to help me and guide me in the right direction so that I can heal. And I had hope. I had something that I had not had for years. And I was so grateful for that. And it was a time where I was like, okay, let's, she knew she had a lot with me. Like there was a lot going on. And so in order to deal with what I was going through, she would start addressing what was the most important And at the time, it was a lack of sleep. And I can tell you, if you don't get enough rest and you're in this state of mind, it exacerbates the problem. So the depression was exacerbated. The anxiety was exacerbated because I was not getting rest.
Which is really interesting because the situation makes you unable to sleep. Right?
Right.
It kind of gives you insomnia, but you
Right.
need the sleep. And
Yeah.
so what was the workaround for that?
So she said, okay, let's address it. Let's address it. And so she said, have you ever heard of journaling before? And I was like, nope, never heard of journaling before. And she said, well, it just depends on what you like to do. So journaling can be writing, it could be music, it could be art, it could be podcasts. However it is that you get what's in your brain out so that you're able to calm your nervous system and be able to relax your body enough to get rest, to actually sleep. And I thought she was crazy. I was like, that sounds a little woo-woo to me. Like, I don't know if that's going to work. And she said, well, just try it. Let's just try it for a week and see how it goes. So she said, what is it that you like to do? And I said, well, I've always kind of written. And she said, great. So take a pad of paper and a pen and stick it by your bed. And before you go to sleep at night, I want you to just write. And she gave me a couple prompts, but she said, I just want you to write. Just write everything that's in your head. And I was like, okay, this sounds a little crazy, but I'll try it. And the first night I did it, I was like, I feel a little more relaxed. And I slept a little bit more. Not a full night, but, a little bit more. By the third night, I was sleeping like a baby, and I didn't want to admit it. I was like, this could not have worked. Like, what? So I went back the next week, and she said, so how did it go? And I said, it worked. I'm going to admit it. It worked. And she said, great, keep doing it. Keep doing it. And especially on the days where you're feeling overwhelmed, because overwhelm makes you shut down too. So like you need to keep going. Obviously, you've got a business that you're running and you've got kids and, and so we need to keep you moving. But at the same time, we need to continue with positive self-talk, positive, whatever. So I continued that. And then we went on to the anxiety because that was my second thing that I was dealing with was panic attacks. And if you've never had one of those, it feels kind of like you're having a heart attack. And it's a scary feeling because you feel like you're not going to get out of it. And so she started to introduce me to tapping techniques. EFT is, it's basically retraining your brain and utilizing tapping motions with affirmations. So you're retraining that negative talk or those negative feelings, and you're creating positive experiences instead, right? So we just went down the line, until we got to the big guns, which was years later, and she didn't do them, but I did the EMDR treatments as well. So it was, it's not a one size fits all. And I talk about this all the time. The first step is to acknowledge that you need to heal from something, right? And when you do that and you make that decision, it's a very scary place and everybody feels it. right? Everybody feels that fear. However, for me, and especially, moving into writing the book, I didn't write the book until I was 50 years old. And I realized that the reason I did that is because I needed to be mentally prepared and have the tools to be able to pull myself out of the state of mind that I would be in writing the book.
Yeah.
Because my book is very vulnerable. No holds barred, like it is all out there. And that in itself was terrifying. However, what I realized is that in stepping back and like pulling back and seeing, okay, I do want to heal, or I have healed. What's my next step? Why am I doing this? Is this just going to benefit me, or am I going to try to help others as well? And so that's what I saw, is there was still so much pain and anger around my dad's death, especially in law enforcement, that I thought, okay, well, not only can I help myself, but maybe I can help them heal, because they see the resiliency. They see that I've been able to heal and continue to heal through this. So maybe they can. And then I thought about other people out there that are just struggling with past trauma, whether it was childhood trauma or, something terrible happened and they're not dealing with it, or they're scared to deal with it. And so then I thought about those people, and I thought I would love to give them what I got, which was hope, which was hope in healing, and talking about forgiveness, talking about, and I tell people this: when you decide to heal from something that happened or some kind of trauma that you've had, you are literally taking your power back from that person that hurt you or that thing that hurt you. You're saying, I am going to heal, and you can no longer hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
This thing that happened to me can no longer hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I wrote the book, that's what I felt. That's what I was doing, is that I was taking my fear and pushing through it, because my purpose on the other side of that was to give people hope, to show what healing looks like, to tell people it's not easy and it's scary, but I did it. You can do it. Anyone can do it, right? Take your power back.
That's so good. That's the truth. I mean,
so that's kind of where my book was born out of.
Oh, it's amazing that it's always the simple things that cause major breakthroughs,
Yep.
and we can dance around simple things forever. But the journaling, right? Super, super simple to do.
Yeah.
Telling your story, technically super simple to do, right? It's just like speaking the story that happened. Telling it actually is difficult, depending on your story and how much shame or guilt is built around that. But that is really good advice, and so true for everything in your life. Is if you can talk about it and you can help somebody else with it, like you journal it for yourself, you got it out, then you can help other people, help them heal, help them grow through what you've gone through. Like you just said, that thing that had so much power over you lost its power, but now that power is being used in a positive direction instead of a negative direction. Now it's power to help others and encourage them to bring the thing to light that they need to work through. So I'll tell you what, Susan, I mean, we could talk about this forever, because I love this topic and it's so powerful. And I love the fact that you got through this. And I think this is such a great story too, for anybody who's like, well, it's been too long for me to start over. It's been too long for me. It's never too late.
It isn't.
The story it needs to be told, whatever that story is. And now you're using it to help other people. And it's a win-win, right? So it's you healing, you're building your business, your career off of it, and you're helping people heal through it.
Yeah.
Like there's so many people winning from something like this. And I'm being a man of faith, in the Bible, it says that the God turns everything for good that was meant for evil, right? So the things that were meant to destroy us, we can turn those around and use those for way more good than they were ever meant to destroy with. And I just find that to be so true and so amazing. And I want to encourage anybody who is touched by your story, affected by what you said today, and maybe you need to heal from something, or maybe you know somebody that you'd love to present this to, they can get your book, right, on Amazon. It's The Other Side of the Gun by Susan Snow. Anything you want to say about the book? Encourage them to go on Amazon and grab that book, but is there anything you want to say about it?
I can tell you, so the book, there's so many ways that I have seen people connect with my book. And I feel like the book has got a message for everyone. It's a universal message of hope. And I think a lot of people need hope. So the book, the title, The Other Side of the Gun, My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency, is important for people to see the resiliency part, to know that they can get through anything, and find resiliency on the other side of it. It's a lot of work. It is. And it's not easy work to do. But when you're able to release yourself from the pain that's held you back, it is immeasurable. You see life, and you love life, and you enjoy life a whole different way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, when you say what other choice do you, it's like, what other choice do you have? It's painful to go through,
right.
But what's the alternative?
Exactly.
You're just going to be dealing with that underlying forever, or face it head on and tackle it and go through it. And I love it. So, as this podcast is true testimonies of breakthrough, like you said, your breakthrough might look different from what somebody else is going through and the breakthrough they're looking for. It doesn't matter if your story exactly relates to somebody else's. It's the resiliency behind it, the vulnerability behind it that leads to that breakthrough. So I love the fact that, you're saying, like, you've no idea how somebody's story is going to impact yours. It's so good. Also, if you want to launch your platform, be the authority in your space, join my waitlist at robzwentz.com. Susan, this has been awesome. Even though we got cut off, man, it's such a powerful story. I'm sure you hear this from everybody that you talk to, because it's just the way you tell it. You're a very good storyteller also. So
thank you.
Excellent in just the way that you broke this down. I can tell you've really processed through these things, because you're very open about talking about it, but also giving detail to it that, if you hadn't taken the time to work through this, you probably wouldn't have that sort of detail to express. So thank you for that. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Yeah, I always end it with this. You're not alone. You're not alone. And like I said, if you choose today to say and stand up and say, I need to heal from this, I want to see my life a whole different way, then go for it. Go for it. Know that you're not alone. And that I just wish for everyone to find the peace within themselves, because that, brings light to your life. And that's all I want. So if I can put that in one person's heart, I've done my job.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm sure that you already have, and you're going to continue to do that by telling this story. So thank you for being vulnerable enough to be able to do this, change lives. Another true testimony of breakthrough on the show. Until next time, this has been the Unstuck Movement.